Good morning, folks. Welcome back to Three's In. I'd like to invite you to sit back with a cup of coffee and I'll share a couple stories with you here this morning. The first is about crew chiefs. I used to love those folks. I still do. I loved meeting them at the airplane. I loved walking around bantering with them, and I loved learning from them. Those folks were very bright people, and if you listen, they had a lot to share with you. So, that introduction being said, the first guy I'm going to tell you about is James E. Davis, Master Sergeant Jim Davis. He was my first crew chief, if you will, when I showed up at the 430th TAC Fighter Squadron at Nellis Air Force Base in munitions. He was a load crew chief. And boy, did he teach me the ropes. Taught me about the weapons we were using, loading, and about working with people. Managing them to a certain degree, but working with them, being sensitive to them. And I am so indebted for the time he took with me to teach me. And then we became fast friends. Now, in the Air Force, being a second lieutenant is one of the toughest ranks that you could hold because you're fresh out of commissioning school, whether it be the zoo or ROTC or OTS, whatever it is, and you don't have any experience. And the brown bars on your shoulders and your hat, your collar and your hat reflect that. Now, I kind of got by that. I kind of skirted that because I learned that if I took those second lieutenant bars about 6 months before commissioning and put them in my pocket and let the change beat them up to where they had scratches and nicks and dings on them, and I put them on, people paid attention to that, and they thought I was more seasoned than I really was. It worked. At any rate, back to Jim. We became dear friends. Jim and his wife at the time, Betty, and the three boys. We just kind of hit it off, and I learned a lot of life lessons from Jim beyond the flight line. We'd spend our off-duty time on Saturday mornings going fishing. A lot of times on Friday night, this was in Las Vegas, come on, folks. So I'd go downtown and, come 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd head over to Jim's, open the door. We didn't lock our doors in those days, didn't have to. So anyway, I'd walk in Jim's, walk over the couch, lay down and go to sleep. And about an hour later, he'd have the coffee on, walk over and wake me up. And we'd get in the car, drive up to Lake Mead and go fishing for the day. And lessons continued there too. For years, he laughed about how I would sit in a boat and sleep, and he'd be doing the fishing. Anyway, I was always thrilled to hear him call me lieutenant. He never ceased calling me lieutenant until the day he died. He would always call me lieutenant. It didn't matter whether I was a captain, a major, lieutenant colonel, or what. It was always lieutenant. When I made lieutenant colonel, I was really happy about it. One of the first people I called was Jim. So he answered the phone. He said, "Hey, Lieutenant." He says, "How you doing?" And I said, "It's Lieutenant Colonel, asshole." He said, "Oh, let me start over. Hey, Lieutenant Colonel, asshole, how you doing?" Then I learned to let it go. So I did. Jim passed a couple years ago now, and God bless him. He will always remain in my heart for the lessons he taught me. The second crew chief I befriended beyond the flight line was Frenchie. Now, Frenchie was a character. He was a civilian crew chief at Vance Air Force Base in T-38s. And he was just a character, but very knowledgeable, and very, very sharp. We'd be doing walk-arounds. He'd point out this, that, and the other to me. He always had like a 5-6 day beard going on, real scruffy butter, and just a dirty t-shirt. I think he took clean t-shirts out of the box and made them dirty just so he could work on the flight line. But God, we had a lot of fun. And in wintertime, you could always tell Frenchie because he'd wear a World War II leather hat as his uniform there on the flight line. Frenchie and Randy and a few others were very big into the EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association. on their off duty, they would build experimental aircraft and fly them. And one day they were out at their barn working on these airplanes, and they'd coat them with a canvas cloth material, and then they put dope on them, and then take an iron and iron it to season it. Well, something happened. Probably Frenchie needed another beer, so he turns around and gets his beer, left the iron on the fabric, and boom! The whole thing just lit up. It exploded. It didn't burn. It just exploded. And he was left with a frame. Anyway, he just took it in stride. A couple days later, showed up with a T-shirt that said Infernal Aviation. So he just kind of let it go. But God, it was just fun to see, walk out on a flight line and see him walking around in that leather helmet. And I just kept thinking, God, I hope I get Frenchie today. I'm going to interject another crew chief here at Vance. I did not know him too well. I had seen him, but he was an Afro-American guy, a black guy, and he always wore a Panama hat. And he just thought it was a gig more than it was being a crew chief for one reason or another. Now, Vance was really unique in the mid-'70s. They had a contract operation there. The contract at the time that I showed up in 1975 was 29 pages long. That was the extent of that contract that these guys operated under. And essentially, Northrop said, we will comply with Air Force regulations, and that's about it. So this one day, this crew chief, I had an airplane come back with red cord showing. So instead of changing the tire as he was supposed to do, he took a pen, ballpoint pen, and colored the cord. Man, who knows what could have happened, what would have happened. But anyway, as the pilot was doing a walk around, I wasn't on that airplane, but as the pilot was doing a walk around, he spotted the ink because the dumbass used a blue ink pen instead of a black ink pen. So he reported it to the line chief as he was, as he should have. And they pulled this kid off the line, and they fired him right there on the spot. They just said, you're gone. And that's the way it should be. Well, of course, this kid went to the union for an appeal, and the union said, look, we have this contract. It's 29 pages long, whatever it is. And he said, we can't afford to lose it because of some stupid act like that. Just change the damn tire. He said, you're gone. Go somewhere else. Boy, I had a lot of respect for Northrop after that. So anyway, now we wind the clock ahead and come to July 15th, 1988. And I knew who I wanted to be my crew chief on my last flight in the Air Force. As a fella I befriended on the line. And I'd watch him day in and day out, and we'd chat a little bit. He has country roots from North Carolina, and I gravitate. Matter of fact, Jim Davis was from North Carolina. He's from Winston-Salem. So anyway, I just kind of gravitate to those kind of folks. I speak their language, and they understand me. So I asked Chris if he'd be my crew chief that day, and he agreed. And that was a friendship that began a lot deeper that day. He did a fantastic job. And when I came back, after landing, I came back and he said, boss, he said, I didn't know you were going to do an A-B climb. He said, I'd have given you a better jet than that dog. I'll tell you about this story a little later on. But essentially, it was hotter than hell that day. It was July 15th. And when I got to the end of the runway, I pulled up for an A-B climb, and that thing just mushed. It was a dog. As much as you can believe a T-38 could be a dog, it just puked itself. Anyway, I struggled up, and I guess it looked okay. Came back, and Chris did a fine job marshaling us in, and so we kept up a little friendship in between over the years, and then I don't know what it was. Chris walked through my mind one day, and I thought, I'm trying to look that boy up. So it didn't take long to find him. Called him up, and we've been good friends ever since. And that's another relationship I really treasure. I got invited over to his place in Missouri and spent some time telling them what I know about building canoes and about raising bees, and we just have a lot of fun talking about those kind of things. So, to the crew chiefs out there, I just hold a tremendous amount of respect for you. And if you're a young pilot coming up, I'd say take time and talk to those folks. They have a lot to share with you. And I don't want to forget this. I'm partial, of course, but one of my most favorite crew chiefs is my son. He's a crew chief on F-16s out at Toledo in the Air National Guard unit out there. Now, I went through an Air Force career more or less with my hair on fire at times, and Keith grew up with us, with me and Marty Miller and Jack Dyer and a bunch of other guys that were just, when you get us together, we were, anyway. And he took a look at flying, and one day he came up to me and he said, "Dad, I just don't think flying is my thing." I said, "Well, don't worry about it. That's fine." He says, "I think I'd rather be a crew chief." And I said, "Well, good for you. Good for you." So he went through school on his own, and they hold him in very high esteem out there, and that makes me proud of him, as I am all these crew chiefs. So with that note, I'd like to end this story with a salute. Ladies and gentlemen, I just hold you all in tremendous respect. So thanks for being my crew chief at one time or another.